when you were young and your heart was an open book.
Well, Dr. Ron, your dental home was certainly something that was, I'm sure, experienced by many dentists. I know you have mentioned several times that you killed the practice, and in killing the practice, you made some changes with employees. How did that help you define your leadership role?
Well, I made some massive changes, but Sherry, it was really much more than simply firing the team. It was a dramatic message that the old way of doing business was now over. You see, I was not leading my team successfully, and the dental team was lulled into this mindset of entitlement, and quite frankly, a deadly combination. So by killing the practice, I was burying the old and offering up a new solution, and it was a solution I wanted for the way I wanted my practice to operate. So this was an all or none approach that was necessary to get everyone's attention.
So tell me about the approach, because again, you are telling me that you made life changes. What did you do with your staff?
Well, the choice was entirely up to each individual employee if they wanted to reapply for an available opening in my new practice. So after killing the practice, I spent the next several hours with my team detailing exactly how I was going to run the practice. I introduced them to my core values. I explained what they meant. I dissected every word and sentence. I gave them the opportunity to ask questions. I did the same thing for my vision, clearly laying out for them where I wanted to take the practice. Again, reminding them that they did not have to own these. They did not have to buy into any of what I was explaining. But if they didn't, they no longer had the opportunity to work with me or in this office. For the very first time ever, I became the real leader of my practice. And it was a role that I should have assumed a long time ago. It had taken me years to realize that the ultimate responsibility of a leader was to facilitate their development as well as my own.
Dr. Ron, you've made a lot of changes in your practice at that time. I'm really curious how making those changes changed fees or patient care.
Well, the whole discussion around fees was one of the elements of this metamorphosis. However, I finally made the decision that I was going to be paid what I was worth, and I expected to connect my compensation with the value, the love, the care, all the extra attention that I brought to my patients' dental health in their lives. So no more of this conversation about the insurance, if the insurance will or will not cover it, or that's over the usual, customary, and reasonable, that UCR conversation. That old thinking had to go. Because my practice was not usual and customary. We were extraordinary. And I declared that we were just going to train on our financial arrangements and how to discuss them with our patients. So no more of this laissez-faire where, oh, we'll bill you, or whatever the insurance doesn't cover, we'll send you a statement. My expectation was to offer up financial options to our patients that were written, they were fair, explained in advance, easy to understand. And of course, any patient who'd been previously quoted a case fee, well, they were grandfathered in. So the best way I discovered to overcome the perceived objections was to communicate and deliver value for the fee. And certainly, I knew that there would be a small percentage of shoppers that would be upset. Yet, quite frankly, they just weren't our ideal patients. So what I did is I directed my administrative team to keep a yellow pad at the front desk. And they were to just simply list those patients that were so upset that they were going to leave the practice. Guess what? We never filled one full page, barely half a page. It's my belief that no matter what our fees are, patients will always view them as a little high or a little pricey. And I validated that myself with a study that I did with my own crown fees. So what I've learned is that if we deliver perceived and real, of course, excellence, combined with true patient care and outrageous service, well, our patients will perceive the value, and not only will they continue to visit us, they're going to refer more. So don't misunderstand. This is not about gouging people. It's really simply about being compensated for delivering remarkable human service.
And remarkable human service is what I've always known you to provide, Dr. Ron.
Thank you.
With the changes that you've made, or the changes that you made at the time with your practice, I know that it must have also affected benefits. So cutting benefits or increasing others, how did that work out?
Well, Sherry, I took a new world view. New in that I was breaking with the traditional dental management thinking of give everything and anything to retain employees. Dentistry as a profession, quite frankly, lives in an HR bubble, a human resource bubble. In the real employment world, employees are paid for performance. Greater performance dictates greater and higher compensation, and of course the opposite applies. Low performance, low pay, or even dismissal. In dentistry, this statement is more enigmatic. Doctor, I've been here for another year, and consequently I'm entitled to a raise. My new worldview was, no more entitlements. I explained clearly that the new wage offerings would be no less than what each was currently making. However, any future increases in wages, they would come as a result of increased output, performance, revenues. No more benefits of paid time off that found my team taking advantage of my generosity that cost the practice revenues and raised my stress, because I often found on Mondays, generally the busiest day of the week, I found myself shorthanded by 25% of my workforce because they wanted an extended weekend. Get this, 67% of the days called in off, they were on Mondays.
That's an enormous cost to the practice. What else did you do?
Well, I eliminated the eye care benefit. I made major adjustments to my benefits package because it was being abused. And it had become expected as an entitlement. It was grossly unappreciated. And my staff costs had continued to escalate because of the generosity, and they just weren't very appreciative. So what I found is I had built this whole compensation package without any real consideration to what it was costing me to provide staff services. So I was now going to track my business expenses like a real businessman and compare them to industry averages so that it would better enable me to make better business decisions. And so I declared that I would no longer pay for their exotic trips to St. Thomas, the Bahamas, and Dallas. No more of these excursions. And I also chose to expand the continuing education credit because it encouraged their personal growth, it enhanced their value, better served our patients. It was just simply good business. So what I did is made people clearly aware that they would be well paid. But I was firm in my expectation. You have to show up and produce results. So compensation would now be performance-based. And then I introduced my new incentive program, a win-win, pay-per-performance arrangement. And it was team-centered and fair. Did it work? Boy, you bet it did. As a matter of fact, my final 5 years in practice were my most enjoyable and profitable, and my remaining team members were making more money than they had ever done in the past.
When you were young and your heart was an open book,